Hi, welcome to boardshop.co.uk. Exciting times with the arrival of the Firewire Machado Seaside. One of the most anticipated boards of this year, 2019. And we've been lucky enough to surf it this morning here in freezing cold temperatures. Two of us, Roger, my secretary, and I. Him on a 5.7, me on a 5.9. And what a lot of fun it was to surf. So let's take you on a quick spin around the board first. You can see the DNA of the Go Fish. He's more skatey, kind of step down version of a 20. So you'll see straight away through the middle of the board, forward, loads of volume. So it paddled really, really nicely. The surf this morning was about just above waist high, quite clean, little bit of offshore, quite weak, and it paddled in really, really well. Enough volume in the rails to get you in relatively early, and a flat rocker so that it carries speed when you're paddling in and also when you're up and riding. Compared to the Go Fish, he's pulled the nose in a bit, so it definitely feels a bit easier to turn. It kind of bites into the turn more quickly, but also it bites into the turn more evenly, if you like, less skatey feeling. As you go through the back of the board, from about the logo onwards, it thins out in the rail, and it pulls into this narrower, less full tail. And I don't know if you can see this, but the tail is pretty thinned out. And again, that's all there to make the board a bit more performancey, a bit more responsive, and a bit less skatey, probably a little bit more precise feeling, I would say. There's another weird sensation as well when you're surfing it, which is a good thing. You'd think with the amount of volume there is in the rail, especially from the middle back here, that it kind of wouldn't bite that well, but the rail feels really grippy and it kind of bites straight away even without too much pressure on the rail. So it feels really responsive even in weak surf, and it really carried the speed. Through the fins, out the back from about 2/3 down the board, there's quite an aggressive double concave which gets really aggressive in through the fins. And that channeling of the water gives you a lot of kind of lift and a lot of speed and makes it feel quite drivey. For conditions, I would say of about thigh high and up to probably a good bit overhead, it's a really good fun board to surf. It's still got that cruisey kind of glidey fish feel, but it goes rail to rail really fast, really smoothly, but it feels very secure, not too skatey. So if you're going to surf it in bigger, punchier waves, that's really important because you know exactly how the board's going to respond when you apply weight to the rail. With something like the Go Fish, it's a bit more skatey, it's a bit less predictable, and so it doesn't handle those punchy conditions quite so well. So it's a lot of fun. Size-wise, Roger, my secretary, is about 70 kilos. He was on the 5.7, and that's 33.5 litres or so. I was on a 5.9, which is 35.5 litres. I'm 75 kilos. And ordinarily you might think that was a bit much volume wise for a performance-y kind of board like this, but actually because there's the foams up the front and there's not too much foam through the back of the board, and because it's tapered in and thinned out, having that foam where it is actually a really good thing. I think with the Go Fish, a lot of people undersized it, and having an extra bit of volume than you might think you need was really good. And this morning, you know, in a 6mm hooded wetsuit with boots and gloves, having the 35.5 litres was an absolute result, because it meant catching the waves, getting in was much, much easier. So I think, as with the Go Fish, don't be afraid of having an extra litre or two of foam for what you might think you actually need. Now, obviously surfed it as a quad with the Machado FCS quad fins. We do the board in futures as well. I would show you those fins, but we've sold out, but they're a similar sort of setup. But what we did play around with this morning is the Machado twins. Big, wide, keely type fin. I prefer the FCS setup just because it is in a quad, and I think the board really is designed to be surfed as a quad, but it did work as a twin as well, but wasn't quite as precise and wasn't quite as predictable with that twin fin setup. So who's going to surf it? Anyone. But if you're looking for a board that is your daily board, for slightly better conditions, it's not a groveler, not a full-on groveler at all, then this will do you very nicely. And if you do go abroad and you're going to surf somewhere a bit more exotic, this will handle size, belies the length of the board really at a 5.9. You wouldn't normally think about taking a 5.9 in bigger, chunkier, powerful Indo-type waves. But the way the board's set up and the way it actually surfs, you can feel that it's got lots of hold, lots of speed, and it will deal with those conditions. It's still got that glidey, cruisey feel of a fish that lots of people look for in a fish, but it's got that added performance. So it could replace the fish and the more performancey shortboard in your quiver, like hands down, no problem at all. The Seaside, as I said, one of the most anticipated boards, and I'm delighted to say that it totally ticks the boxes. It does what we expect it to do. And his previous boards have been in the LFT construction from Firewire. This is in the Helium. The Helium is certainly tougher, much tougher. I would say probably the most tough epoxy on the market right now in terms of pressure marks and general wear and tear, as well as keeping that flex. But the Helium still has that parabolic balsa rail setup, no stringer, and it feels so responsive. It's so light that you can really whip it round quickly. And for some reason, I don't quite know or understand why, but Helium deals with wind much better than some of the other epoxy constructions out there. It doesn't get buffeted, you don't get hung up as you're paddling in. And this morning it was light offshore, but you don't feel that it gets very wind affected. So it is truly a brilliant construction. So there it is, the Firewire Rob Machado Seaside, available in FCS and Futures, with fins to match from both brands. To sit above your full-on groveler, below your very high performance shortboard, it will cover that whole territory really well. And fast, responsive, but still glidey and still got the elements of the fish kind of ethos. On the site right now, buy it on finance, 0% of course, trade in an old board, all the usual stuff applies. Check it out.